Okay, thank you, members, officers, and any members of the public joining us. Welcome to the executive meeting for January 2022. 25th of January, not exactly how some of us were expecting to spend our Burns night, but it's good anyway. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mansfield and Councillor Perry have sent their apologies.
Thank you. Okay. Members, I think Councillor Perry and Councillor Mansfield haven't joined us on Zoom, are they? So it's only in the chamber. So, members, are you happy to confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting? Okay. Declarations of interest. Do we have any members who want to declare an interest? Councillor Garrett?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I've got a non-pecuniary interest as a volunteer of Surrey Heath Age Concern, and within the paper today, we are granting money to Surrey Heath Age Concern. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah. Councillor Jennings-Evans?
Just as we're discussing the physical strategy tonight, that I'm the SHBC representative on Surrey Sports Council.
Thank you.
Non-pecuniary.
Okay. All right. And likewise, I would like to declare a non-pecuniary interest. My wife is chair of Surrey Heath Age Concern. And as Councillor Garrett said, we're discussing them getting a grant this evening. Okay. Right. If there's no more. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was kind of caught out. Yes, Councillor Bates.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And I have I think it's a pecuniary interest actually, or a personal one, in regard to the revenue grants, because my sister works for Catalyst. So just purely in relation to that particular grant, I won't comment. I will comment on the others.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members? No. Okay. All right, thank you. All right. We'll move on to questions by members for myself or the portfolio holders. Are there any questions?
No,
Leader. Okay. No. Councillor Page?
I might have one, and it might relate to something later on in the agenda, but I'll ask it now if that's okay.
Sure.
I've discovered that labour costs and material costs are going up with inflation in my business, and I'm sure that's the same for the council. I wonder if we've got some capital programmes up and coming, whether we might like to review those capital programmes and see if we need to look at our commitments with those going forward. So it's just a question around whether those capital projects are kind of worth doing in the face of the news with inflation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing, that it's well above inflation with supply chain issues, etc. So asking whether we should review our capital projects, I think it's a very good idea. Can we take that as an action that we'll be looking at that?
Leader, certainly. I know that inflation, RPI is heading at the moment beyond 5%, but in the past 12 months, we've seen build costs increase between 8 and 12%. So, pretty much double what the RPI is doing, and that inevitably will have an impact on the council's capital programme. So we can certainly have a look at that.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Right. So we'll move on to item 5. Okay, Councillor Garrett, revenue grants.
Thank you, Leader. The comprehensive report sets out the recommendations, which I'm sure you have all read. With this in mind, I won't go through the whole paper, but pick out a few important points. Our council has a proud history of supporting local organisations' core costs through our revenue grants, and over the past years have been in the fortunate position to allocate an annual budget of £200,000 per annum, plus support in kind, which includes parking, subsidised rents, etc. As members are aware, council finances are currently under pressure, as our income is down and demand is up due to COVID. Despite this, we are able to provide the same support for this year thanks to government assistance. The report also outlines the continuity of funds for the following financial year, starting from the 1st of April 2023, for the ring-fenced 3 organisations which consist of Citizens Advice, Surrey Heath, Basingstoke Canal Authority and Blackwater Valley Countryside Partnership. The Council will work hard to try and identify funds over the next few months to be able to retain the funds for non-ring-fenced organisations for the year 2023 to 2024. All grants are subject to a service level agreement that ideally will be agreed prior to the 1st of April 2022. Our budget restrictions have led to the recommendation that we are not able to support any new organisations for this next period starting from April 2022. But the officers who work in this area will discuss any other funding options that we may have available, for example, the Charity Enabling Fund, to try and support wherever possible. The agenda at point J on page 1 in your papers outlines a delegated decision relating to the funding for voluntary support North Surrey. Following a recent meeting with the Chief Operating Officer and Chairman, I would like to change the recommendation toward in line with the organisations detailed within A to I, all other recommendations to remain unchanged. I am sure you will agree all the organisations we support in Surrey Heath are all doing a great job, but I would like to particularly highlight Citizens Advice, Surrey Heath, for all the work they have been doing in the last 2 years, supporting the residents of Surrey Heath in some very difficult times. Especially the work they have done recently to facilitate the household grant scheme. So far, they have received 672 claims and issued on our behalf almost £43,000 in both food and energy vouchers. This grant scheme is open until the 31st of March and we still have funds in place to continue to support those in Surrey Heath that really need it. I would ask the Executive to resolve the points as laid out in the paper and I'm happy to answer any questions that members have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garrett. Just to be clear, you mentioned in small 1, item J, you want to take that slight decision off and just grant it as per the others. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, questions for Councillor Garrett? Oh, sorry, I see the hands up. Yes, so Councillor Malvaginam and then Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Leader. I'm glad that we are able to provide the funds, grants for various organizations, and I admire the fact that you have not cut any further compared to 21-22 in 22-23. That's welcome. My real question I guess it may not be applicable to Councillor Garrett, possibly to you, Leader, and your finance lead. As we know, as Councillor Garrett had already mentioned, the council's finances are a bit tight, and we haven't seen the last year's accounts, and we have seen the half-year results so far. Are you confident we can still afford this money you are planning of giving to this very good organizations? I have nothing against these organizations. That's point 1. If you want to come back to me, there are a couple of points I want to make. This is the main point I want to make. It's a big point, but it's a very valid and important point for the administration to take into account. I'm happy to go on and ask a few particular questions on the grants, or do you want to answer that and I'll come back to you soon afterwards?
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Malvaginam. I think let's pause there and just get an answer to that one. I know that Councillor Garrett, he mentioned it in his talk there, and it's in the paper about how this is actually funded. But the question is, are we confident that we can pay this the 200k out? Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Leader. As it says on the second page, item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think it is. The funds for this for 200,000 have come out of the Outbreak Management Fund, which was a government grant. This means we're able to fund all of those organisations that have been listed, plus the 3 ring-fenced organisations for 23-24 as well. So yes, we are confident because the money is there. After that period of time, then obviously we need to relook at the finances.
Okay, thank you.
If Councillor Bates is okay, because I guess technically he's next, but if Councillor Bates, you're okay, then I'll be happy to take your next question, Councillor Malvaganam.
Thank you, Leader. Overall, I see that if you look at the pages going back to 31 onwards, we have it's laid out there, achieved. I mean, to be honest, the points and the way it's laid out, it's a little bit confusing. What's concerning me, if you take page 31, citizen advice, Surrey Heath, it says to maintain independently examined accounts to be provided as requested by the council. Now, looking at reading the paper, I'm not too sure which point it is. Has it achieved it or not achieved it with COVID restrictions? Similarly, it goes on in every sort of, if you look at page 33, you actually say provide accurate information outcomes of the service provided, which is Camberley Central Job Club, okay? And we are going to hand out £6,000 and you still haven't received accurate information for the accounts. I mean, this is a decision you're making based on historical performance by that particular organization has not been met. Again, going on to Camberley Central Club again, maintain accounts. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I know they have been shut, but producing a set of accounts should not be a difficult proposition, I would have thought. Similarly, it goes on page 35, it's the same thing. Page 36 and page 37, as you know, I'm a supporter of Hope Hub. Personally, I have raised funds, when I say personally, through the club I'm a member of. We have raised money for Hope Hub and we will continue to do so. But again, for me, the point here is we are giving, I believe, about £30,000, and we have got the Knight Middleton Road property under their scheme. I've raised this many a time. I'm not too sure whether they have got a handle on this, Leader. I know you do support it, and I do support it. I want them to succeed. I think we should have a better oversight with this organization. That's the three big observations I have on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Malvaganam. Councillor Garrett?
I think I understand the question, which is, have we got the relevant information reference the accounts for these organisations, which before we go through this, creating this paper, the officers pulled together all the information. We check the SLAs, which is outlined here. I understand your comment about it might not be lined up properly, but the points are there, that we do go through the points and we do go through the accounts. I can hand over to the officers who can update you and confirm to you that they have received the relevant accounts information, but I am very confident that they have received the information because the paper would not be before you unless they had already previously done that.
Mrs. Boytle?
Yeah, I think the point to actually sort of outline here is that when we actually evaluate the grants, it's actually for a 6-month period. So but in effect, you can't predict exactly what is going to happen for the second 6 months. So it is subject to them providing and meeting the service level agreements, but you do have to allow them the year to do that. In relation to the Hope Hub, and I know that there had been a query over that, this actual application just relates to much of the outreach work. It doesn't relate to other projects because Hope Hub services range over a number of different areas within the Borough Council, and housing quite often are responsible for dealing with things like the new property that's opened. But this focuses on their outreach services.
Okay, so Councillor Malvaganam, I think you make a solid point that it's really, really important that the service level agreements are monitored. But like Mrs. Boytolt and Councillor Garrett just said, I think they are monitored. I don't think the layout of this helps in terms of giving confidence, because sometimes you're right, they don't line up. But the point you were really making is that are we monitoring the service level agreements, particularly the accounts? And I believe that we are. Okay. Do you want to just respond, Councillor Malvaginam, before I move to Councillor Bates?
As long as the officers are confident they are monitoring it, but reading the report, it seems they have not provided it when these reports are produced. I would appreciate if the exec or the exec officer in charge or officer in charge could actually confirm that later on, to confirm every single organization has complied with SLA. That would be a little bit of an added benefit for the other councillors. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have just confirmed that we have done that, but I'll be happy for Councillor Garrett to talk to you offline about that. Okay, Councillor Bates.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to make some entirely different points to the ones that you've just heard there, because I come from it from a slightly different emphasis. The first point I wanted to make in paragraph 1.2 is this statement which says, "It is extremely unfortunate in such difficult times we are unable to continue at the previous funding levels." Now, it is true that, as you've outlined, the council's income is lower, and we won't get into the political reasons for that, because I've no doubt we'll have a discussion about that at the budget meeting. But the reality is that whatever size of the pie that we have, or whatever amount that the council does have, we do actually still have some choices in this. And we just need to be honest about this, that we actually are making a decision here that other things are more important than this. And, you know, that is the reality of it. And that is actually what you're saying. And we should just say that, and not kind of, oh, you know, it's all very unfortunate. It's not unfortunate. It is a choice that is being made here, that this is less important than other things in regard to the amount of money that we do have, which is lower than it is what we hope. So that's just the general point I wanted to make. Coming on to the more specific things, I don't have an issue with the recommendation as it is at the moment, but I do have more of a concern regarding what happens next year. I do think it's correct to write to organisations at this time and give, if you like, the 12-month notice period, which you're meant to do under the Surrey Compact. I think that is reasonable, so that they have 12 months in order to reflect on what that means to them. However, I think there's a number of problems here for the council, and I'm just going to outline what I think they are. Firstly, we need to understand what the impact to any organisation would be if we did not continue funding them as of after this year. Will that mean the organisation would have to suspend services? Will it mean they have to close? At this moment in time, it isn't clear from the report as it is. Now, that's not a criticism, because obviously this report's had to be written quite quickly in regard to changing financial circumstances, but we need to understand that. Will this grant, if you like, end any of the activities? And linked to that is actually the second point, which is what would actually what would it cost to the council if that happened? So if either a service could no longer continue that is being offered to Surrey Heath residents, or alternatively it's reduced in some way, we need to understand how would that impact on us. So an example has been given up there about the Hope Hub. Now, we know the Hope Hub do partnership work with us in a number of areas, and this is one aspect of that. But if they weren't to get 30,000 given by this grant, what does that mean for us and our residents? And particularly, does it mean that we might have to pay out money in some other way in order to cover whatever service, or if there's no service provision, what the impact of that is going to be? And there's no actual information about that at this stage. As a result of that, this budget is not correct, because what's being done here is that, if you like, we're removing all of the expenditure out of the budget in terms of grant giving. We're saying we're no longer going to pay these organisations, apart from the 3 ring-fenced ones, at this moment in time. We'll obviously see if money comes in, but we haven't taken into account any alternative funding that we might need to give for the services that are cut as a result of that, or the wider impact to the council that would arise from this, leaving aside the impact to the residents. We haven't done that. So we can't take out that money and assume it's a net saving until we've worked out what the cost of it is. So we need to do that work, and we need to do that over the next few months. And finally, there's nothing in here about how would this impact on the corporate plan. I mean, we've just had a very long extended consultation about that, which, you know, we all were very proud of the consultation that took place, but we haven't understood that. There's no reference to it here. So we need to understand that going forward. So my view is actually, I don't have an issue, as I said, with the recommendation it is, but I would encourage you to perhaps add one further point, and as maybe a recommendation, if you were so willing, and that is that you bring forward a report in either November to the executive to outline about what the actual situation is with the money. So you give the 12 months notice, you said that you're trying to find money for these organisations, you do the piece of work that I've outlined so that you understand the costs to us as a council, us as a community, and then you're able to reflect in terms of next year's budget what we actually need to do, whether we do actually put some of that money back in or whether we don't. And I'm afraid until we've done that, really, we shouldn't really be thinking, apart from the three organisations we've ring-fenced, about completely cutting. But we do need to give the year's notice so that people are at least aware of that.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. As I've said on a number of occasions, there's a lot there that I agree with. I think we might be coming at it just very slightly from slightly different points of view, but we arrive at the same place. Everything you say about giving them 12 months notice was exactly what the thinking was, that we know that we can fund, and we're very happy to fund for this 12 months. And we've just taken the opportunity to confirm to the ring-fenced organisations, the three of them, that having said we'll ring-fence them for 3 years, they're safe for the third year. But we wanted to give notice to the other normal recipients that their funding is in danger, and we're giving them the notice that the funding will be zero, but we are going to work on it, as Councillor Garrett said. Now, actually, you could argue that the paper should say that we're going to be working to identify the funding, and exactly what you say, identify what the effect on that organisation would be if the funding did disappear. It's always a disappointment to receive or not get the funding that you expect. In some cases, it will be an irritation. In others, it could be catastrophic. So that needs to be understood. And your second point is also valid. What would that mean in terms of the council having to provide services, if indeed it meant the council would have to provide those services? Because, and I hate to say this and put it bluntly, but if a charity did not exist, it doesn't automatically mean the council has to pick up those services. Absolutely, the work is scheduled to be done, and that's exactly what we will be doing. You've laid out the plan pretty much perfectly, but you're also right, the paper doesn't say that. All right? Now, I'd put it to Councillor Garrett if he wants to accept the suggestion from Councillor Bates that there's a line in the recommendation which says we bring back reports. I think you said October, November, which is actually the timing we were talking about. Or whether you're happy to leave it as is. It's up to you, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to put that in. I mean, the idea was that we will be reviewing it now anyway, looking at all the organisations, seeing the repercussions of giving them the 12 months notice now. But I'm happy to add a point in there, if we can do that, that we will be in a position where we should bring something back to the executive in October this year.
Okay, so there would be, in the recommendations, there would be small 7, right after, surprisingly, small 6, all right, which is a paper will be brought back to the executive in October 2022, which examines the impact of the lack of funding as laid out in this paper on each and every one of the charity organisations. And also, part B of that would be what the potential impact on the council would be as a requirement to do that, or alternatively, how those services may be delivered in another way. Okay. Councillor Bates, does that cover your main point?
Yes, thank you. I think that would really help. I'm just thinking, professionally, I work for a charity that isn't sponsored through this. It's a different borough. And if I was to receive such a letter, that would be the sort of thing that would help me. We all understand financial situations and the need for charities to become less reliant on single sources. But it does give an avenue for people to put their point if they are actually saving the council money. And I think there may be some of these may be in that category where actually we give them some money, but they actually save us a lot more money than that which is done, and we need to understand that.
There are obvious charities, Hope Hub, Citizens Advice, Surrey Heath, where they are absolutely multipliers. They deliver services that if we were to deliver ourselves, we'd have to spend a lot more money delivering them. You're right, but that doesn't in any way mean that the other charities are less. All right, so we're happy to do that. So you're happy to have that in there, okay? All right, are there any other questions for Councillor Garrett on this paper? No. Okay, so we have the recommendation we're advised to resolve. I'm not going to go through them all, but small 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. And the amendment that 1J is that the funding is just granted to Voluntary Sport North Surrey, as the portfolio has stated. Members, are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay. And Councillor Garrett, your second one, Surrey Heath Community Grants.
Thank you, Leader. You will see from the paper, for community grants which have been reviewed, all the recommendations outlined in Annex A have been agreed by the Multi-Party Community Support Working Group. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those members involved in this working group for all their time and effort. I would ask the Executive to resolve the Community Support Working Group's recommendations relating to Council's community grant schemes as set out in Annex A to this report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Councillor Garrett on this paper?
Councillor Malvaginam.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Councillor Malvaginam, that yellow hand happens to be against a pretty yellow background, so I'm struggling there. But Councillor Malvaginam.
I'm glad you got an assistant next to you. Thank you, Leader. On this particular paper, I do understand most of it in terms of where we are coming from. Yeah, I'm a bit confused, or the word we used to use was miffed, by 2.3. I mean, 7 applications a year, that's very low when you have a reasonably large grant sitting there. Are we advertising properly? Or do the residents or the businesses, if applicable, do they know this type of grants exist? Are they able to access these grants? Is there some sort of a hindrance somewhere along the line which we don't understand? I think we have had this discussion before because some of these grants were sort of hidden within our website, but I believe that has been resolved. So I'm a bit concerned that not very many people are applying for these grants. Maybe you can have a look at it and answer me today if you can. If not, I'm happy to wait for it to come to the full council. Or send me a letter as per usual, Leader. Okay,
Thank you, Councillor Malvaginam. I'd hope that it's not usual for me to have to write to you, but I'm happy to try and answer. But also, Councillor Garrett, I think, is happy to answer.
Thank you, Councillor Malvaginam. If you're talking specifically about the Community Grant Fund scheme?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So with all these grant schemes, we do make people aware of it. It's regularly on social media, and I know the officers are regularly making sure that organisations that are applying for certain grants that might not be acceptable to them, we point them in direction of other grants. That being said, as you say, this particular one hasn't been used a lot in the last 12 months, and we will obviously make sure that we publicise it. I think there's also something upon us as councillors to make sure that the organisations and people within our wards are made aware of these schemes. I know I certainly do through social media, etc. So I will certainly take that away, have a look at it, how we publicise that one, and if there's something we need to do differently, then obviously we can take that on board and see what we can do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions for Councillor Garrett? No. Okay. I don't know if it's been brought out specifically in this discussion, but I just want to make sure that members are aware. It's Annex A, Table 1.2, the Ward Councillor Grant Scheme, page 45. Councillor Garrett, the intention there is to change the Ward Councillor Grant Scheme ever so slightly, which obviously would reduce the amount of money available in line with our finances position at this time.
Yes, thank you, Leader. When we discussed this at the Community Support Working Group, it was decided that rather than rolling over the money that's in there, any unspent funds by councillors will then not be rolled over. So with effect of, I think it's April this year, if the funds have not been spent by the ward councillors, then they will not be rolled over. That I believe that we will be putting more funds in April, but for this year, anything unspent will not be rolled over.
Thank you. Okay, so if there are no more questions.
Sorry, Leader, very
Councillor
quick.
Malvaginam, yeah.
I think it's a very good idea, actually, if they don't use it, to take it away. Because pointless them having it and keep rolling it over and over again. And also the fact, if you look at it, it was on my list to ask you. I'm sorry, I missed that one. There is quite a lot of money in that pot, 52,000, spent only 16,000. I mean, it's an amount of money the council could save. Maybe think about only giving less than 1,000 to the councillors. Very clearly, it's not being taken up. Ideally, we want more for those people who want to use it. And also, there's a sort of some of the councillors who are double hatters have got more. They got 1,500 from us and X amount from county. I mean, you need to look at that from that point of view as well, because it is important if you are in a financial constraint that you look at all angles. Thank you, Leader.
Sure, thank you. Okay, just taking those in reverse. I don't think it's appropriate that the borough try and pick off county or parish councillors, double hatters, treble hatters, because they've got that. They're given that sum of money for grants from their authority, the parish or the county. I'm only as concerned as leader of this council and the members in this chamber. I think your suggestion, it amazes me, Councillor Malvaginam, as it does you, I know from our conversations, that there are councillors who have £1,500 basically at their disposal to help pretty much any charity organisation, and they haven't spent a penny, whilst I know that others have spent their entire £1,500. I think we're walking the tightrope pretty well there with Councillor Garrett's recommendation, that what we're going to do is, if instead of having 1,500 untouched, then the following year you've got 3,000, and the following year you've got 4.5. Exactly as you're suggesting, it's a kind of use it or lose it now. And if they haven't spent their entire or any of their 1,500, and it gets to the end of the financial year, rather than rolling it over, we're going to put that back in the coffers, and they get 1,500 for the next year. But if I limit it in any way, it means that those people who are using it a lot are going to be penalised for the people who aren't using it at all. And I don't see the logic of that, and that's not how we would go. So, all right. So, if there's no other questions... Oh, sorry? Right, who was first? Right, Councillor Alloway was first.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, could I ask that each ward councillor gets a statement of unspent funds as soon as possible? Thank you.
I know that's sent out at least every 6 months. Yeah, to your group leader. I'm not sure why it only goes to the group leaders, but it goes to the 5 group leaders and we disseminate it. But Councillor Garrett, can you send it out to everyone? Is there a particular reason that it goes only to group leaders and not to? Oh, it's a good point. Yeah. Okay. It's so, believe it or not, Councillor Alloway, it's so that your group leader can talk to you about spending the money if you aren't doing. Okay. Right. Who was next? Was it Councillor Deitch? Yeah, Councillor Deitch.
Yeah, hi. Actually, I was going to suggest something similar to what Councillor Alloway just said there, but more than happy for you to have a copy of my statement, Councillor McLafferty. But I'd like to receive that personally. If you want to kick my butt because I haven't spent it, that's fine. But send me the statement directly. So I think that all members should receive that statement. I won't have any problem spending mine, but if it rolls over, you know, I'm not going to give it to organisations just for the sake of it, just because I've got to spend it. I want to make sure that it's going to appropriate organisations and for things that it's relevant for. You covered on the comment from Councillor Malvaganam about double and triple hatters. I'd just like to remind him that the funding criteria is different at county, so I don't think that his suggestion is appropriate. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Deitch. I don't believe any councillor gives the money out willy-nilly. Every applicant has to go through a certain amount of administration to get it, and so far, as you can see there, there have been, where are we? 32 grants processed so far for nearly 17,000, and I'm sure each of those helped enormously. Okay, Councillor Edward Hawkins.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Deitch has picked up my point about the criterion for the county, which, bearing in mind we have a larger area to cover and we can go outside of that area if it meets the four basic rules of the county where they're driving. That was one point. The other point was it would be helpful, I think, to councillors if the criteria for issuing the borough grants was reissued, and it would just enable people to relook as to who they wanted to offer the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett, you happy to add in the criteria? Okay, thank you. We will do Councillor Hawkins. And Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Leader. Just to say, I wonder if it would be possible, please, to know what the statement is headed, because I've had a look through my emails. I haven't quite got back 6 months. It's unusual for me to miss something which gives the opportunity for the community to benefit. So I wonder if it could be clearly headed. That would be certainly very helpful.
Sure. I think Councillor Garrett is just waving at me.
Thank you, Leader. The last email was sent out on the 1st of December. You were on the copy list and it was addressed to grant quarterly summary with a spreadsheet attached. I can send it to you again if you so wish.
No, I will be able to find it. Of course, I won't be able to open the spreadsheet because of our IT provision, but I will be able to find it. Thank you.
Never want to miss an opportunity, Councillor Wheeler. Okay. Right. I think that's all of the questions. Okay, thanks very much for all of that. So we are item 6. Okay, the executive is advised to resolve that the Community Support Working Group's recommendations relating to the Council's Community Grant Scheme as set out in Annex A of this report be agreed. Are we agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Okay. Item 7. Councillor Duggan.
Thank you, Leader. Members, as you know, this paper was delayed from the last executive. The feedback at the time was that we hadn't allowed enough time for the paper to be properly considered. To be fair, I think the additional time has allowed this important paper to be improved after much feedback from both councillors and the public. Let me just say, I'd far rather that we didn't need to bring this paper forward, but we do the demand for council services has increased and our income is down. I want to draw your attention to two overarching observations before I get into some of the detail. Firstly, as the paper states very clearly, we haven't put charges up in our car park since 2014 and 2009 for the town centre and the borough-wide pay and display car parks respectively. Secondly, whilst it's really important to recognise the contribution that car parking services makes to the council's overall budget, contributing to the other services the councils provide, first of all, it covers the cost of the parking service itself and improvements and repairs to the car parks. I think the extensive works to Main Square car park are pretty well documented. But last year, the Chobham car park had its potholes repaired and an overlay applied, and the Watchetts Road car park had the monobox removed, the base repaired, and then the blocks relaid. These are expensive projects. I also want to highlight the two different approaches to the price rises that I'm seeking agreement for today. The town centre multi-storey car park, one for the town centre multi-storey car parks and one for the borough-wide pay and display car parks. These approaches recognise that the two town centre multi-storey car parks are the only car parks that actually provide a surplus. Currently, all the others lose money, as is detailed in Annex 3. The approach for the town centre car parks is to increase the price in line with RPI. Given that we haven't increased the price for 8 years, RPI over that period is 23%. The overall increase, therefore, is 23%, with some of the hour-by-hour charges changing a little bit more and a little bit less, in that we didn't want to end up having to charge £2.43, for instance. The eagle eyes amongst you will, as well will also notice that the previous paper in December was modelled using CPI. We've reviewed that and believe that RPI is a more suitable measure, as both the government and the ONS descriptions note that RPI is suitable for travel and transport-related items. The approach for the borough-wide pay and display car parks is different. Here the goal is to make these sites get to a point where they break even. I recognise that putting up prices isn't popular. No one wants to pay more for the same service or to start for paying something that used to be free. And the strength of this feeling, in particular for the pay and display car parks, accounts for what I would regard as the biggest change between the December paper and the one that I'm recommending this evening. Previously, I proposed that we started charging for parking in all car parks from the moment the car parked, thus removing all free parking. We've rowed back from that position, and where there is currently free parking, we will continue to provide free parking for 1 hour rather than the 2. As such, the town centre will continue to subsidise parking in the rural and outlying car parks. Interestingly, when I spoke to some of the Camberley Town Centre business owners, they were less interested in the price rises and more focused on ease of parking, ease to find a space, and ease to pay. Convenience for them and their customers was uppermost. So to the paper. There are 7 recommendations in total, introducing the charges that are outlined in Annex 1, introducing charging in Wharf Road car park, to agree to continue with the NHS and Carers Pass scheme up until the 1st of May this year, to pass on the Ringo charges, which we've been absorbing, onto the service user, to reintroduce the charging for the first 2 hours at Knoll Road. You may remember we suspended that whilst the High Street was being upgraded and the parking there couldn't be used. We're also proposing to retain the low-paid worker subsidy permit scheme. And then lastly, and in line with our climate emergency, we're looking to investigate how we can incentivise greater use of zero-emission vehicles. So to finish, we wish we didn't have to increase the charges for car parking, but we need to cover the costs. Our NNDR cost alone is more than £500,000. Maintenance, security, groundworks, cleaning, electricity, lifts, etc. account for another £500,000. But on top of that, the council needs the parking service to continue to contribute to the overall budget so we can continue to pay for other services. I appreciate this isn't a comfortable decision, but I urge the executive to support the paper, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Duggan. So, Councillor Malvaganam. I don't know if you're speaking, Councillor Malvaganam, but you're on mute.
Sorry. The famous words. I'm sorry. I was on mute. I was going on to say, it's not, thank you very much for all the hard work you've done, Councillor Duggan and the officers. It's not an easy decision to increase prices, which I fully appreciate. But there's an overarching problem we have as a council, because if we charge, particularly in the town centre, I know we need to charge. I would recommend you relook at the construction of the charges, because if you give 1 hour or 1 hour, 2 or 1, maybe maximum 1 hour free, so the shopper who goes to local shops to buy will keep the businesses running. That's my view, one. Secondly, like you, Councillor Duggan, I also spoke to quite a lot of businesses down on the high street. And funnily enough, I got an entirely different reaction. Their reaction was, it's not a good thing to raise prices, and they would like to see some sort of a free parking for a short period. Even the barbers were saying the same. I was saying that they were looking at 2 hours, and I said, listen, we may have to put some charges. They would compromise for an hour. So I do appreciate we need to cover the cost. This is a real crux of the matter. We can't afford to subsidize it. That box is ticked for me. We cannot. We need to actually have some sort of free parking. And also I want to say something. So I have done my survey in the town centre, and one of my colleagues who is not here, Councillor Cliff Betton, did a survey in Frimley Green, and all the Frimley Green businesses are against putting any charges there. I mean, they are saying we have to have some sort of free parking, because the problem is, the good thing about free parking, say for an hour, the resident parks a car, they know after an hour they're going to be charged, and they take the car away. So there's a good rotation of cars. There's no overspill onto the side roads. Similarly, town centre, the businesses will thrive. I can go on about it for the next half an hour, but I see that there are lots of views waiting to be stated. So, but bottom line is, we must cover the cost. Secondly, we must have some sort of free car parking. Thirdly, our businesses need to survive given the economic conditions we have within the council, within our borough as much as around the country. Thank you.
Okay, there wasn't really a question in there, but do you want to just reply to the 3 points of Councillor Malvaganam?
I guess, let me ask you a question. Are you proposing that we introduce free car parking in Camberley Town Centre, Councillor Malvaganam?
That's what that's what the business, most of the business I spoke to do want at least an hour free parking, and you can adjust the prices after 1 hour. I guess you need to work the sums out, but that's the proposal I'm putting forward for you to consider as admin. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think the maths would ever work. If you look at Annex 1, you can see that in the main square town centre car park, there are 400,000 parking events for 2 hours or less. The vast majority of all parking events are 2 hours or less. If you give half of that free, you can guarantee that significantly more than half of the number of visits will be for less than 1 hour. When we've modelled the increased income in the other car parks, we have assumed where currently parking is free for 2 hours, and we're going to reduce that to 1 hour. We have assumed that 90% of the visits to those car parks will continue to be free. and only 10% of those visits will actually incur a charge. If you played that back through the town centre, you won't cover the costs.
Okay, thank you. I mean, Councillor Malvaginam, I don't think anybody's surprised, and you're intelligent enough, you wouldn't be surprised that the businesses are saying, please have free parking. Why wouldn't they? You know, if there's no cost to them. One of the things that I know when I spoke to a business when he said he'd like to have free parking, I said one of the things you could do is you could pay for that customer's free parking for the first hour. You know, what do they call it in America? Validated parking or something. You know, you could give the customer his first hour free. But that was not exactly a welcome suggestion. You know, I felt that the council should really be offering free parking, not the business. So it's not a surprise that businesses want free parking. Nobody wants to put the parking up, but the days of free parking, I think, are in the town centre certainly are longer. All right, our Deputy Mayor.
Hello there, thank you, Leader. I have a couple of observations that I would be grateful if the portfolio holder would mind picking up. The amount of the car parking in the town centre is, it does refer on the paper to being comparable to other local authorities and their charges within their other local town centres. However, I don't think we've given, there's any thought been given in this paper to the fact that unfortunately Surrey Heath, Camberley town centre does not offer the same, at the moment, does not offer the same shopping experience and same facilities as the likes of Basingstoke, Guildford, Reading. And Bracknell, of course, is another one. And so I think we're not actually, that chart isn't comparing like for like. So that's the first comment I'd like to make. The second comment I'd like to bring specifically to Wharf Road, if I may, in Frimley Green. Now, as you're probably aware, I live in Frimley Green and therefore have been used the local businesses around here quite regularly. I am fortunate enough to be able to walk. Having spoken to the hairdressers and the dentist, there is concern that the parking, what they are saying is that although they have that free time, that in the case of hairdressers, people are often in there longer than that. The same applies for the dentist. And the fact of the matter is that if you get in your car and you need to park your car, if you're going to local shops, you're not concerned with driving a little bit further afield if it means being able to park. So in Frimley Green's case, you might drive down to Mitchett to go to the co-op or up to Balmoral Drive to go to Tesco's there if you can't park in Frimley Green. And so the fact of the matter remains that by doing what we are doing for those people who are time restricted, that is simply removing the business from Frimley Green itself. The other question that, and this one probably is a bit broader, is staff car parking for the businesses. Again, this doesn't seem to have been taken into account. If people, in most cases, would be there for more than an hour, should they be going to work? And all this is going to do is push these extra cars into residential areas. And again, this does bring me back to Frimley Green, because we have, for those of you that know it, the doctors and library car parks just around the corner. They are free, but the problem is that even at the moment there is a struggle with the parking outside the doctors. And all this scheme is going to do is to push the people who would normally park in Wharf Road round into the doctors, therefore increasing the problems round there. And of course, as we all know, people who are going, need to park to go to the doctors often need to park nearer to the door. And obviously that's not going to be possible if there's people who would work, staff and what have you, who are then parking in the car park. And finally, just to finish, I do feel that the car parks within this paper, the village car parks such as Wharf Road and the town centre car parks, are two entirely different issues, are used by different people with different needs, different requirements at different times. And I don't feel that they should have been put together as one paper. I believe that each of the car parks should have been considered individually on their own merit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. There were 4 points there, Councillor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't think the paper chooses to or seeks to try and say that we are the same as Basingstoke, Reading and Guildford. I think we would absolutely recognise we're not, if only in scale. But it also includes Wokingham, Farnborough and Aldershot in the list of car parks, where we look at the 24 hours, and Blackwater, Farnham, Hartley Whitney in the other table. So I think there is a fair spread of trying to demonstrate. It is difficult. You've got to find a 35,000 population town local to us with a similar shopping need, and that's tough. So I think the comparison is entirely reasonable. In terms of Wharf Road, absolutely recognise that the purpose of what we're trying to do is to create churn. And if I take your two comments there together, it's quite possible that the Wharf Road car park is being used by staff for car parking, which then sort of flies in the face of the fact that the hairdresser wants, for people to be able to park there for 2 to 3 hours. Our observation on Wharf Road is that's highly unlikely because the cars are parked there pretty much all day. I totally get your point about the village car parks and the town centres car parks being different, and I would like to think that that's obvious in the paper, and I actually mentioned it in what I said at the start. We've taken 2 entirely different approaches for both. And not all of the what I call the borough-wide pay and display car parks are the same. I accept at the moment mostly they are, but York Town car park is different. And I'm more than happy in the future that we do look at each of the outlying car parks differently. But they certainly are reviewed differently from the town centre car parks.
Okay, and there was just a point, I think Councillor Wheeler mentioned, Councillor Whitcroft mentioned about staff parking, and there's the low-paid staff season ticket, isn't it?
There is a low-paid staff season ticket, but I'm not sure that that applies to all of the other car parks. Oh, it does. So there is one. It is for low-paid workers. I can't remember exactly how we set that, but there is a staff car parking permit scheme available online.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. I've got 6 other councillors. So, Councillor Bates.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to make a few points on this as well. And firstly, I certainly don't think we should be having any more free parking in Camberley Town Centre. We do actually have some free parking in Camberley Town Centre for half an hour on street, but I don't think that is the right way to go. And I've been one of those councillors who actually think we should have put these charges up some time ago. In terms of the town centre, I also want to reiterate that in terms of what the Deputy Mayor just said, I entirely agree. And actually, I think it's been regrettable this has been lumped in as one paper. And because this is remains, I made this point in the last meeting, these are entirely different issues. And the financial aspect of that makes that really clear. So let me just take the town centre ones first. The proposed £290,000 income, or projected income, I should say, the vast majority of that actually relates to the main square car park. And the vast majority of that relates to the increase in the hourly rate in terms of 2 hours, etc., rather than season tickets. So £230,000 is projected to be the income for that. Now, I personally am happy to support the proposal on that. I don't think there's a problem about putting it up to £2.20 from £1.80. People had the opportunity of paying nothing for 2 hours at Knoll Road, and as you can see, the vast majority of people still paid for parking at Main Square. So it doesn't suggest to me that actually free parking makes a difference in terms of adding people to the town centre. So I'm happy to support that proposal. I know I don't get a vote on that, but that gives you some understanding of that. I don't support the proposed increase in season tickets to the level that's being proposed. I think that's too high. An increase, but that is much larger, particularly in regards to the 12 months, than I personally think should happen. It's not something I'm going to die in a ditch over, but I just think that's too high. When you look at people paying that as a one-off sum, that is going to be too much for people, in my personal opinion. So I don't think you're going to get the amount of income on that. In terms of Knoll Road, I personally would have just gone back to the pound rather than £1.20, because in fact, it's not an increase of 20p, it's an increase of £1.20 because people are paying nothing at the moment. So for the first 2 hours. So I personally would have gone back to that and then increased. But again, it's not something I feel massively strongly about. But in terms of the village car parks, this seems to me about fiddling in areas that actually could be dealt with locally. In my view, if I was if this was an old Dean car park, I would agree with the idea of encouraging churn and in having a charge. I don't know what Councillor Garrett's view would be, but that would be mine. However, what I'm hearing is that at least some of the Frimley Green members don't, and another one's contacted me privately, has indicated that they don't actually support this. And it does seem to me a bit wrong to force on councillors, if that is the case, a proposal that is not supported by the local councillors. Now, it may be support, I know it's a cross-party in Frimley Green, but I do think the local councillors are the ones who do know village car parks better than anybody else. And in bearing in mind the amounts of money that we're talking about here are fractional, I'm not sure that going down a route that is unpopular is a good idea. I think that it doesn't, it is not actually going to help the community. It isn't really adding to the council finances, with the exception of Chobham. I don't know what the Chobham councillors' views are about the proposals, but it just seems to me a bit of a pointless way of doing it and not actually helping the council and not actually adding to the financial situation either. There's two other areas that I think the council should look at, though, which are not covered in this and I think should look at going forward. One is I think we should now look at with the town centre car parks not having a separate Sunday rate. Sunday is as much a day shopping as any other day, and the prices don't change on a Sunday if you're in the shops. So I don't really see why the parking should change. My view would be we look at phasing that out and we charge the same every day of the week, with the possible exception of bank holidays. But that is a good way of raising more money for this council, because to me, car parking is a good way of raising money rather than other ways that we could do, or cutting services. We've also got climate change, which hasn't been mentioned yet. So I don't have a problem, I never have had a problem with charging car parking at the correct level. My issue has been it's not been at the correct level. The second issue is I do think we should look at, and I've mentioned this before, it's my final point, this issue of differential pricing in the same car park or in car parks that could be split. Because actually, and I've talked about this before, and I know it's bored people, but around the psychology of parking. When you go into Knoll Road or Main Square, it is ridiculous to suggest that every car parking space has exactly the same value. It doesn't. Some are more convenient than others, and there's a good reason why the upper floor has very little use, and the ground floor is everyone's driving around to find the bottom of it. And I think we should look, not necessarily immediately, the technology is not quite there, but we should be looking at the idea of charging different amounts at different levels in the car park, in the same car park. If you're on the top floor, you're charged less than if you're on the ground floor. Or you can split the car parks if they're adjacent and do it in that way. And I think we should be looking at that, not for today, but I do think we should be looking at that as a council, because again, this is a way of giving people choice. And we have many very rich people in Surrey Heath who couldn't care what they charge to park their car. And then we have other people for whom parking is an issue. And, we do have disabled people who get it for free in parking in town. But to me, I think that's something we should be looking at, and we'd also raise income as a result of that. So they're my observations. I don't have a vote tonight, but most of this I agree with.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Dugan.
Thank you. And yes, thank you, Councillor Bates. I'm pleased that you agree with some of the elements in the bill. I think, on the whole, the vast majority. I take your point on season tickets. I'm not minded to change the numbers now. There is the opportunity now, as you say, just to be hit with it's 1,280 is a big sum. But there is the opportunity there to do it by month, by quarter, by half year. I suspect that a lot of the car parking permits are paid for by businesses, and they'd frankly rather pay the charge once a year rather than once every month. In terms of the, I absolutely agree. The people who know most about the rural car parks would be the rural ward councillors. I am also fairly confident if you went and asked every single one of the rural ward councillors, do you think we should put pricing up or reduce the amount of free parking? The answer is going to be no. And that's why I believe this has to be an executive decision, because the councillors on the executive have to take the more difficult decisions across the entire borough. The differential pricing on the car park by floor, I've heard you made that point before. Interestingly enough, we're going to have to look at replacing the technology in the town centre car parks. It has its 10th birthday in a couple of years' time, and we're already investigating what technologies are available. Oddly enough, it's not there that we're looking to make savings. It's around the amount of money that we have to pay for the finance, the back office finance elements. But whilst we're reviewing that technology, I think that's something that would make sense for us to review. And if it can be implemented where the cost to implement is likely to be met by the increase in pricing, then it was something that we should consider. I agree. I've got another one here which I can't now understand what I've written. It was about the town centre and not having a separate rate. But if you want to ask that one again, I'll answer it.
Yeah, it was why should we not scrap the Sunday rate?
That was the best, absolutely the best part of it. I can't believe I didn't. We'll absolutely look at that, model it, but we'll not. I don't intend bringing it back or changing it now. But it's something that we can look at for the next time we bring a similar paper to this one back, which hopefully won't be in 8 years' time.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan, Councillor Bates. Councillor Deitch.
Yeah, hello. So, first of all, I agree with Councillor Dugan that this is a much better paper than what was originally proposed. And I would like to thank the leader, the deputy leader, portfolio holder for pausing for thought and doing the best they can with officers to improve what we have in front of us tonight. And I have to say, I'm proud of the part that I played in helping you, persuade you to do that. Now, I'm not going to speak on any of the other car parks other than the only car park in my own ward, because I think that pretty much everything else has been covered. And all I would ask actually is that the wording on 3.13 under Deep Cut Car Park is tightened up a little bit. In particular, the final sentence, because I think that we need to understand that it's very easy to whip up support for a particular thing. I could easily whip up 4 or 5 residents to say, oh, we want this, or we want that, or we want the other. And I don't think we should be making decisions on the views of just 1 or 2 people. So what I would ask is that you add to the end of that sentence in consultation with ward members, because it's the ward members who, as has already been acknowledged this evening, they're the ones that should understand what's going on and what residents' views are. And I think that you'll be making much more informed decisions in respect to this if you consult the ward members. So I was hoping you could tighten up the wording on that for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deitch. Councillor Duggan, are you happy to accept that additional wording at the end of 3.13?
In truth, I have my reservations, and it was almost in the point that I made back to Councillor Bates. The ward councillors will not, you look at Yorktown, we could have done all sorts of stuff in Yorktown, but that's in our backyard, so what, should we, shouldn't we? The parking decisions have got to be made at the borough level, not at the ward level. I would far rather that we tightened up that sentence, that final sentence, by removing the last part. in other words, that the council receives requests from local residents. The position will be reviewed should circumstances change, I think would be a better tightening up.
Okay, Councillor Deitch, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I can live with that. I can live with that if you take out that that bit that you're talking about. Can we just confirm exactly what it is that it's going to say, Councillor Dugan?
Okay, so the final sentence would read, the position will be removed should circumstances change, full stop.
Yeah. Fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deitch. Councillor Duggan. Councillor Edward Hawkins.
Thank you, Leader. A number of points. Firstly, I know, Councillor Dugan, many thanks for this paper. Enormous amount of work has gone into it. Can I just say, I mean, it's interesting that people are saying that it should be separate papers and we should do one for each area. I mean, I think Councillor Dugan has got it right. I mean, we are borough councillors. We have to take a holistic view of activities within the borough. And I think it would be absolute nightmare to try and patch together the paper, which is comprehensive, by doing it in pieces, piecemeal. I like Councillor Bates' suggestion on the Sunday rate. I wish I'd thought of that and got it in first, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Totally opposed to having free time in Camberley, because if people want to pop to the shops for half an hour, they have the opportunity to go local. They can park locally. Under the proposals, they can park locally free for an hour. It's less mileage. It's better for the environment. And I think we should be congratulating ourselves on trying to encourage activities locally. I don't have any of the car parks in my ward, so I've had to do my research, and we've all been out on this, on Borough Road and Watches. And interestingly enough, people were saying 2 hours was possibly too much, and they welcomed the 1 hour free because they felt that would give a churn. So, I think it's interesting to hear about the cost of repairing the car parks and, of course, the NNDR. And I don't think everybody appreciates, or many of the residents appreciate, just the actual cost to the borough of looking after the car parks and keeping them safe. I would like to, and it's not a question other than I would like Councillor Dugan to agree with me that this is a solid paper and it is one that should be congratulated, and we should go forward with it and promote local. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I think we've got a number of councillors coming on. I think Councillor Dugan definitely agrees that it's a solid paper. Councillor Alloway.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just a couple of observations. I mean, Camberley Town Centre being a lower cost generally than other town centres is a definite positive in attracting people to go there. Certainly for me and friends do like to go to Camberley because it isn't a horrendous charge like you get in Woking. And I appreciate Woking's got maybe bigger stores, but, Camberley works for me. Also in the multi-stories, there is some floors which have got bigger spaces. I hope there's no move to start squashing those down to get more cars in, because the likes of people that haven't got a blue badge but struggle to get in and out of a car with a bad back or something, that's a real bonus to have those floors with bigger spaces. And lastly, is there any option for perhaps commercial sponsorship for some of these car parks that would subsidise the costs? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alloway. Councillor Dugan.
Yeah, thanks for your comments about the Camberley Town Centre. Very encouraging. No, there isn't a plan to reduce the bigger spaces. In fact, they were only introduced relatively recently, really just in recognition of the fact that cars are significantly bigger than they used to be. I remember most of the garages in the my area, the accent garages, are very difficult to use for parking a car because they were built back when cars were significantly smaller and you can't get modern cars in there. So no, they were done. That was done for a very specific reason. So that, and they were done on the upper floors, in fact, to encourage people with larger cars to go up those floors to get the bigger spaces. Haven't considered sponsorship, can't think of any other car parks anywhere else that are sponsored, but more than happy to give Mr. Leal the challenge.
Thank you, Councillor Alloway. Councillor Tedder.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we're going to talk about Chobham, and I don't understand how much the executive actually knows about Chobham car park. And I think that one is different to all the others and is quite unique in as much as it has to be used by the school because there's no off-street parking. Everybody using the school has to go there. Parents dropping off, parents collecting, and more importantly, volunteers. And schools run on volunteers. And for 2 hours, that's okay. And they have to pay for the third because 2 hours isn't enough time to get from the car park to the school, do that bit of volunteering, get back and get in their car. So already they are paying an hour. If we stick to just 1 hour free, those volunteers have not only given their time and energy, they are now having to pay for car parking. And I can see the schools suffer as it is. And so they are going to have less volunteers. We then go to the Sangs. Now, we all know what Sangs are. We know that it has been something that's been encouraged to keep people off of the common, an area that we are supposed to protect. We're trying to encourage people not to use the common. And as far as the Sang goes, it's been extremely successful. And on the borough's calculations, 30% of the people that use Chobham car park are Sangs users. They take their dogs, they go for walks, they do whatever. So firstly, if you charge them after the first hour, where are they going to go? Back on the common, which exactly is the opposite to what we consider Sangs should be. So I think nothing has been given for consideration. I know what Councillor Dugan is going to say, that you don't have, there's nothing to say Sang should be free. Okay, then let us charge all the other Sangs car parks. Let's stick charging meters in there. Let's charge the people for using Sangs. So if we're going to have an overall paper, let's charge everybody or let's have them on the same level. Because at the moment, the Chobham Sangs is only 2 hours free, whereas all the other Sang car parks are free 24/7. They wanted to take over 30% of the Chobham car park when the Sangs was installed. But of course, it's potty because you have to cross Chobham car park to get into the Sangs. They couldn't police it. So perhaps the council could look at the Green Spaces team and see if we can claw back some of the development money that is given for the benefit of the Sangs. I would like to see us go back to 2 hours free in Chobham, but support Councillor Bates that we should charge 7 days a week. I can't see the benefit of having it free on Sundays. I think we should do that and get some money in there. I heard Councillor Dugan raise that Chobham car park has just had 40,000 spent on it. That budget was set in 2017 and it's taken the council 5 years to repair it, which was one of the reasons that Chobham Parish Council didn't actually take over Chobham car park because that was their intention, but they wouldn't take it over because the council told them then that they needed £40,000 spending on the service. We have little or no cleaning. We have very little other than the toilets that are cleaned. So I really think that bringing that 40,000 in is a bit of a red herring. Has the council also taken into account how much they think the people who use the Sangs will disappear? Because if at the moment we've got 30% using it for Sangs, you're now going to charge, well, surely if it was me, I'd go back to the common where it's free. They certainly wouldn't use the car park. Have they taken into account how much of this revenue they're expecting to get that they will lose? And thirdly, how about keeping the machines in good working order so that those people that do use it for more than an hour or two actually pay their dues? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tedder. Councillor Duggan?
I thought that Councillor Tedder knew, she said she knew that I was going to say, so not convinced I need to respond. So I think, yes, we do know a good amount about the Chobham car park. And in terms of the school usage, you will note from the previous paper that as we were proposing in that paper to remove free parking entirely, that for Chobham uniquely, we were going to set up a scheme so that the school could get passes not just for volunteers, but for parents as well, to use the car park free to drop their children off. The volunteers, you know, the gist of it is, if they want to use the car park, then they will have to park after 1 hour, not 2. The Sangs being extremely successful. There's an irony in the fact that you think that we should make charging for all Sangs car parks the same, but you think that we should deal with Chobham car park differently to all the rest of them. But I'll leave that one. I love the fact that you support charging on Sundays. We will, as I said to Councillor Bates, review that going forward. I have to say I wasn't aware that the 40,000 budget for the repair to the car park took as long as it did to take place. But nonetheless, the point is, car parks are expensive businesses to run. I don't believe the Sangs users will disappear. I imagine most of the Sangs users, and I don't know, I haven't done a survey, but they will use the Sangs to walk dogs, etc. I have 2 dogs, and I walk my dogs for just under an hour every single day. So I believe that the lion's share of the Sangs users will stay where they are. I would like to think that we keep the machines in good working order. We send people round to the car parks every single day, and I would have thought it is something that would be checked. But I will ensure, going forward, that we pay particular attention to keeping the Chobham car park ticket machine fully functional.
Councillor Tedder, do you want to just, anything
Yes,
you want
please.
to come back on there?
With regards to the machines, I've reported it myself that they've been out of order and you haven't been aware of it. And with regards to the school supplying tickets to let people, the one you suggested, several years ago, the Chobham Parish Council came and spoke to Eugene Leal, asking if there was something they could do with regards to volunteers. And that was promised that they would actually give a special voucher to allow volunteers to be in the car park over the 2 hours because of the benefit they gave to the school, and that never materialised. So I have little faith in things like that, but thank you anyway.
Thank you.
I'm happy
Councillor
to
Tedder. Yeah,
I'm happy to review that final part, Councillor Tedder. I hear what you're saying, and if we can put an easy scheme together, we run a number of permit schemes, then we can have a little look at making that happen for the school.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tedder. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. I won't reiterate points that have already been made by Councillor Tedder, but I will give some facts to give some background to some of the comments that Councillor Tedder has made. So when Chobham Sangs, the Watermeadow Sangs was considered as Sangs, one of the mitigating reasons that were put in that paper was the fact that it came with 2 hours free parking. I appreciate that some of you that live in the very urban area of the borough and don't benefit from living adjacent to a triple SI will be almost incapable, as is evidenced by a number of things that happen, the passion that my local residents feel for the common. And I know that I've said it before, but I'm going to take the opportunity to say it again. And that is the purpose of SANGS is to be an attractive, more attractive alternative for people to exercise their dogs, to play with their children, and to take recreation to the triple SI. It is there to protect the triple SI. Councillor Dugan, I've looked for other areas in our borough or in neighbouring boroughs whereby there is a charge that is associated with the SANGS, and there isn't one. So that's the first point. I will say that I'm grateful for the pre-engagement that was done and for the exception that has been made for the village car parks. There is also a difference though in the way in which those areas are classified. So for example, Bagshot and Frimley are district centres, and Chobham is a local centre, i.e. it's got less to attract people, one might argue, than the other areas. So first and foremost, the justification or part of the justification in the original paper about the SANGS referred to the fact that Chobham SANGS provided free car parking. In addition to that, there was money spent very early on within the paper and budgeted for that gave money for improvements to the car parks for livestock handling and livestock access. Interestingly, almost every other borough have very clear management processes and very clear auditing for the way in which SANGS money is spent and the management programme. We have a fabulous management programme for Chobham SANGS, none of which is costed or very little of it is costed, with the exclusion of the money that was spent in addition for improvement to the entrances in relation to the car park. So I have we committed a spend of 1.4472 million with the purchasing of it, and we committed another 265,000 on the maintenance and upkeep of the SANGS, which is lobbed together. So we don't even refer to it as Chobham Meadows or Chobham Meadows SANGS. We refer to it as Station Road SANGS, and it's lobbed together with the one that is a little bit further up the road in Chobham, which is Chobham Place Woods, Valley End Woods. So I feel that we are in danger of double accounting. I would like absolute assurance, because believe me, I've asked the officers for the information and I have searched all public record papers to get my hands on, that I would like absolute assurance from the executive that we are not double counting the cost of Chobham Car Park, because there is definitely money that's been spent for it on those areas where I can actually identify a definite spend. And I would like the executive to take into consideration the importance of SANGS. So you have said an hour's free car parking in other village centres. No other village centre provides that car parking for SANGS. It isn't something that can be dismissed. It isn't something that should be dismissed. And as I said, absolute assurance that there's no double counting going on here. It would be very disingenuous to call something that it isn't. And lots of people, I know how fond many people are of parties. Lots of people like to have parties in Chobham SANGS. It makes a nice alternative to going to the common. And I share Councillor Tedder's concerns that this will drive people back on to the triple SI and will go further to erode it. So assurances, please, that there is no money that has been allocated. Well, that's not true. You can't give that assurance because we've already evidenced that there's been money spent on improving access related to the car park at Chobham SANGS, but absolute assurance that that money, and there is no money that is going to be associated with that car park from the payments that come to maintain the SANGS, please.
Councillor Dugan.
Wow. So there is still free parking in the SANGS. It'll just be for 1 hour, not 2. I can't give you that absolute assurance now. What I would ask you to do is to outline what it is that you are saying so that I can give you absolute assurance later.
Sorry, what I'm asking is this council honestly and transparently maintaining that there has been absolutely no budget associated with or associated to the maintenance of the car park that is adjacent to Chobham Sands? And if there is, then it should be treated in the same way that every other Sands car park is treated, whereby it should have free car parking. And at the very least, it should have enough time for people to fully enjoy that facility and not be driven up the road to the common.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wheeler.
There's no requirement for Sands to have free car parking. As well, you are aware. So you can survey as much as you like. There's no requirement for Sands to have free car parking. I can't give you the absolute assurance because I just don't know. But you tell me exactly what it is that you are looking for, and I will go away and investigate and come back and give you an answer.
Councillor Wheeler. I think, Councillor Wheeler, thank you for that point. I think, if I understand you correctly, you're making the point that if we're using Sands money, right, on that car park, then it's associated with the Sands, and then you make the point that if it is, then other Sands have got free parking. Yeah. Okay. I agree with Councillor Duggan that what we want to do is we want to go into that. You know, if a councillor is asking this executive for assurance, then we want to be able to give that, but we're only going to be able to give that, of course, if we're absolutely assured that it's correct. Right. So I think the point about, if I understand you correctly, has Sands money been used at all to in any way maintain or improve the car park? And that way we're, as you're calling it, double counting, because we're using Sands money for car park maintenance. I think that's the question, and I'm more than happy for that to be investigated and for it to come back to you. Okay?
May I just come
please
back
feedback.
on
Yep, go on.
that? In all honesty and with all integrity, this paper as it stands, without that assurance coming back, cannot go forward, or at the very least, this paper should be amended pending investigation around the monies that are contributed by the Sands, that Chobham Car Park should stay as is for now until we have that assurance to come back. Because if the justification for that, for increasing it, is to recover costs and to make sure that it doesn't cost the borough anything, given that we are already, we have already spent still money on the car park, then it should be amended until we have that assurance surely to come back.
Yeah,
and Councillor Duggan, it's trite to say that there is no requirement for free parking. The statement is that it should be a more attractive alternative to going on the Triple SI. So if there is car parking, it negates the whole purpose of the Sands.
Okay.
Car parking.
I think, okay, I understand what you're saying. I think Councillor Duggan is quite right. He's agreed to come back and give you an assurance about, well, actually to confirm or not whether Sands money has been used for car park of the maintenance. Right? But then you make a step which I wouldn't be able to support, which is then that concludes that the car park then is part of the Sands and should be free. Okay, and I wouldn't support that the paper is amended because of that assertion. But I think the assertion, the investigation that Councillor Duggan will do and feed back, that could possibly at some point be raised again and we could review it again. But I don't think I would support the paper being changed on the possibility that something may have happened. Okay, forgive me, Councillor Wigger, but there are more people, so we're going to move on. Councillor Bates.
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to touch quickly on a couple of things. Firstly, I can't see anywhere in this report the projected income at Wharf Road. I can only see the Wharf Road 2 season tickets. So if unless there's a page missing or I can't find it somewhere, but there's nowhere which is actually projecting what the income is for Wharf Road in terms of the hourly rate. So it does seem a bit odd to me that we're projecting something, saying it's a good thing, but there's no actual figures to back that up. At least none that I can actually see in the report. I think we've just reiterated why this needs to be done separately in future. Too late for this paper. But these are, the idea of talking about livestock access for a town centre car park and Sangs is just, it's nonsense. These are two very, very separate issues. And the whole point of the town centre is that is where the money that we're trying to generate, that's the vast majority of it comes from. These are 2 points, I think, for future. And to be fair, Councillor Duggan, you have picked up a number of helpful points. But I think you have to understand, I think, from what people are saying, whether it's Frimley Green or Chobham, they're saying that this hasn't been understood in their community. Now, I don't know those councillors are better able than me to represent their areas. But obviously it does then gall a bit to see that in Yorktown, your own area is not going up. Now there's, maybe reasons, maybe good reasons, that's not for me to judge, but you can understand, I think, the frustration that some councillors have about perhaps not having the level of engagement, although in fairness, there was some engagement, I know, since the previous paper. One final technical point I just want to make, which is regarding the equality impact assessment. Can we just be reassured that there was one done, which has been signed by an assessing officer? Was that received and reviewed by a service head? And has it been reviewed by the Equality Action Group? Because on page 76, neither of those signatures are on the paper. And obviously with something as important as equality, it's absolutely essential that's done. I'm sure it probably has been done and it was just in terms of the paper, commitments for the committee. But can we just be reassured that that full assessment has been done for this very important paper?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bates, can I just take care of the first little admin one? Bottom of page 66, you see that the title happens to be at the bottom of page 66, but it's for the table, Wharf Road Car Park Daily Fees, page 67. Okay.
Got you. Thank you.
Just
Yeah,
admin there, so it is actually all costed
that.
out. And Councillor Duggan.
Yeah, I think I've already conceded that I accept that the ward councillors understand the ward dynamics better than I do about every other ward. That would be unreasonable for me to think that I know otherwise. Equally, the council has a cost to run Chobham Car Park. And today, Chobham Car Park receipts don't cover those costs. So the cost needs to go up. And this paper seeks to do that in the best way that it can. I don't know the answer to your equality impact assessment, but I will ask Mr. Leal, who is sitting opposite, if he can answer it, please.
Yeah, the equality impact has been written. It has not been signed off by the group. I will send that out to the group.
And your point about York Road, I think the point was made, and it's been made again this evening, Councillor Bates, about looking at the car parks individually, and I'm sure you'll accept in the first paper they were lumped together. The pay and display car parks, I think spuriously referred to as the rural car parks, and some of which are in the middle of industrial estates. But, and each one was looked at. We deliberately said, let's look at each one, and you know, they're on the same paper, but they're broken down into each one, and the officers have looked at it. And the ward councillors, of course, know their wards better than anybody else, but the officers also know the car parks. The Yorktown one, and you're right to point out that it's in the leader and deputy leader's ward, and it hasn't gone up. But it's the only one that doesn't have free parking of any kind. And the charges that were being suggested were very similar to what was there, or even down. And we chose, as the ward councillors, to leave it as is. It was working very well. So that's why they're not moved. They're frozen, because they were actually about right, and there was no free parking. We didn't want to introduce free parking to that car park. Okay. Councillor Malvagadam.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, I raised this point earlier on, but I just want to reiterate to the leader and the deputy leader, because I'm sure you and I, or all three of us, or all of us here, are interested in the welfare of the council. Because one thing I'm actually concerned is, I'm on the same page as all of you guys are to cover the cost. One way or another, we need to cover the cost. That's a must. Secondly, the numbers we have used in all the calculations, I have to assume these are pre-pandemic numbers. And we are assuming pre-pandemic level of parking. I have to assume that because during the pandemic, the parking would have been very different. Going forward, I reiterate what I said earlier. This is for you to observe only. Is going forward, the pandemic, the economy will take a hit. People's incomes are going to take a hit. Increasing the car parking at this particular moment to the level suggested to cover the other costs in other areas in the town centre is not a good option, because I suspect it'll hurt our local economy in the town centre badly. It's only an observation. It's for the exec to take what I've just away and think about it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Malvaganam, thank you. I just for a moment felt that you were suggesting that the main square car park costs should go down and all of the other pay and display car parks should all go up to cover their costs. But I think I don't think I understood you correctly. It is an observation, you're right, and it seems counterintuitive to say that car parking doesn't have an effect on footfall. And what we find is that there's a lot of evidence where it's been mentioned tonight where car parking was free and people still chose to park mainly in Main Square, etc. All the evidence points to, as long as the increases are reasonable, they have negligible effect on footfall. But the impact is clearly different when you haven't put up the prices for 14 years or since 2014, and everyone's used to the levels that they are, and for a lot of the very, very good points that have made. Okay. I think we are at the point now where we have had all of the questions. I think that's a legacy hand you've got there, Councillor Malvaganam. All right. If there are no more questions, then we are going to bring this to a vote. Okay, Councillor Dugan, in all of the discussions, there were obviously suggestions, etc., but I haven't heard you accept any of the suggestions that were made. Are you happy for the paper to stand, or have I missed anything?
Just the one change to that paragraph.
Oh, the deep cut one. Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay. So, members, the recommendation is the executive is advised to resolve that. Small 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, with the amendment to the deep cut. Items change that edit. Are we agreed? Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, members. I know that I wanted to make sure that everyone had their say. I hope you feel probably, as Councillor Malvaganam said, he could have gone on a lot longer. We could have discussed that an awful lot longer, but particularly for the officers, this has already been a long day. So I think we've had a good discussion about that, and we've now, the decision is made, and we'll move on from there. So item 8, Surrey Heath Physical Activity Strategy. Councillor Jennings-Evans.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, members and officers. Tonight, I'm delighted to bring before you the updated physical activity strategy. As many of you will remember, this was scheduled to be delivered in the spring of 2020, but was delayed due to COVID, and a decision was made to review the strategy to reflect the effects of the pandemic on the levels of activity of our residents. I would like to personally thank the team of officers, especially Ben Sword and Craig Alford, who have worked tirelessly to put together the new strategy. The document before you outlines the priorities of this council over the next 5 years to create an environment that allows our residents to participate in physical activity regardless of ability, background or circumstance in a way that works for them. It is based on comprehensive research by Sport England, Active Surrey, health-focused partners and community workshops, along with sports clubs and leisure organisations. As a result, the strategy highlights key areas as a priority for action moving forward, involving 6 key themes. The positive health impacts of physical activity stretch far beyond disease prevention. There is strong evidence to show that it impacts on weight management, cognitive function, sleep, confidence and overall quality of life, as well as social benefits by facilitating community connections with their local area. There is even a proven link between taking part in physical activity and improved job opportunities. Overall, it is reassuring to note that despite a small increase in inactivity during lockdown, the levels have not reverted to those measured in 2015 to 2016. So we are in a good position to utilise the strategy to move forward. Therefore, I propose that we accept the strategy as outlined in the papers this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings-Evans. Do we have any questions for there on the paper? Right, I'll go to Councillor Wheeler first, and then I've got Councillor Garrett.
Thank you. Yes, I think we as a borough do a wonderful thing in terms of encouraging people, not just in terms of the physical activity, but also the mental health benefits that come as a result of meeting up. And I know that there have been a number of walks that have been organised on Chatham Sands. It's a pity that moving forward, the opportunity to enjoy these for a longer period of time and for the mental health benefits of actually being able to talk for a longer period of time are going to be taxed by the increase in the car parking charges.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Leader. Looking at 1.8 and the fact it mentions the Old Dean residents, it's something that's become obviously aware of in the last 18 months, 2 years. I mean, we've talked about food poverty, etc., etc. But one of the things I've discovered recently is the fact that there's things like children that can't play sports because they haven't got the right equipment. And obviously in my particular ward, where we already know there's a high level of obesity, the average age of residents is less than 10 years, less than the rest of the UK. At the recent food store, we actually had a community project turn up called Community Kit Bag, which was something I'd never heard of before. And I know it's running throughout Surrey, and gentleman came along, and what he was doing was people were handing in old sports kit, and they were being handed back out to residents who needed football kit, football sports, football boots, etc., etc. And it's just a thing that I'm conscious of the fact that residents need to keep fit stuff, but they might be stopped from doing it. Children stop from playing football, children stop from playing sports because they haven't got the kit. One thing I wanted, and I know both Ben and Craig are aware of this community kit bag. I have spoken with the officers. I'm prepared to do a donation of some of my Councillor Ward grant scheme to fund sports boxes for the Old Dean. So when residents come up, if they need certain kits, we can donate to them so they have got the sports kit. I wanted to make sure that other councillors are aware of community kit bag. I know you are, and maybe this is something we should publicise more throughout the borough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garrett. Okay, Councillor Alloway, if you don't mind, if I can just have Councillor Jennings-Evans just jump in front of you for a second, just to reply to Councillor Garrett.
I fully support that, Councillor Garrett, and as our CEO, Damien Roberts, and our leader fully know that I mentioned to them even prior to this meeting, and I've emailed them on exactly this subject about how we can roll that out so that sport is accessible. There are no obstacles to why people can participate.
Thank you. Councillor Alloway.
Thank you, Leader. The easiest and most cost-free form of activity to increase fitness and well-being is walking. Most people, including mobility impaired, could easily benefit from getting out and walking, or not using cars to get everywhere. In order to make the option viable and attractive to all, means we have to facilitate that option. Logically, for walking, it would be expected to use a footpath. And by now you should all have guessed where I'm going with this. Yeah, it's been in excess of 2 years continually raising blocked footpaths in various committees and groups that I sit on. If you want people to walk and use footpaths more, then you have to make it less of an ordeal, safe, accessible and comfortable. This includes walking to and from a bus stop with shopping bags or a child buggy. The very specific proposals made to tackle the issue for the 5-year strategy didn't even get on the page for health, quality of life and well-being. So I'm not sure what happened to the listening and responses as a council objective. The blocked path issue cuts across many committees and functions, such as safer routes to school, pedestrian safety, planning, parking, police, highways, all of which I've done my best to engage, but the experience is an absence of strong will or ownership or deflection to the too difficult box. I have had some success in better access area and duly thank colleagues in the capacity of officers, councillors, parish in getting extra street lights, drop curb crossings and pedestrian refuge island, but much more needs to be achieved for residents. I would love to have a slice of whatever the total estimated budget is for facilitating the extensive list of objectives in this proposed strategy. I'm sure the blocked footpath issue could be significantly improved to benefit of many and aligns wholly with the national Active England campaign to make pedestrians and cyclists the dominant interested parties for the highways network. So here's my proposal for Surrey Heath. Adopt a commitment to make the borough the most pedestrian and cyclist friendly in Surrey, including that every child deserves a safe and minimalised emissions exposure route to school. Perhaps the executive could commission a cross-cutting task group to deliver it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alloway. I think, needless to say, I agree with 90% of what you've said. Of course, walking is important for mental health and exercise and fitness and many, many other things. And of course, having decent footpaths is, a big part of that. And you and I have had a number of discussions about where counties' responsibility finishes and borough with SIL can do something, etc. And I know you and I have spent a number of hours in those committees discussing that. I'm more than happy to continue to look for ways in which SIL we can contribute. And again, if there's specific areas, I know you've raised them and we've got them as looking at projects. I think the borough is already doing a lot of what it can do for those areas to improve. I would love this council to declare that it wants to be #1 at everything, right? But realistically, I've said this many times, I think there are 320 boroughs in England and Wales, and by size, we're number 300, right? We have limited resources, and it's not realistic for us to declare that every council meeting that we're going to be #1 at something. But you have my support to get that done, okay? And I'm more than happy to talk to you again offline about this, okay? Thank you. Councillor Deitch.
Yeah, hello, thank you. So I think that actually Councillor Alloway has touched upon some of the things that I was going to say. Obviously, there is that fine line between county and borough areas of responsibility. But one thing that we could do, or two things actually that we could do, is obviously utilise our, as you've mentioned, community infrastructure levy money, SIL money to help facilitate quite a lot of the things. For instance, with development, deep cuts, some of
actually okay to play ball games, and we want to encourage it, but people don't know. So that's again something to perhaps think about. Not necessarily recommending a change portfolio holder to look at. And then finally, just there's a suggestion made under 5.5 about taking underrepresented groups around the leisure centre to make them aware of the facilities on offer. I would perhaps suggest that slightly broadened out. I appreciate we've got a particular interest in that leisure centre, but there are other leisure facilities in Camberley that would be worth taking underrepresented groups round. But also, I sadly missed the opportunity to go round the arena when there was an opportunity for councils to do that. And I just wonder if maybe that could be rearranged so that those of us who may have missed that could actually go around that leisure centre and then could talk about that with our communities and indeed other leisure provisions in the borough, so that we could perhaps then be the champions in the community that are being talked about.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Jennings-Evans.
Thank you. So there were several points there. I'm sure that we can arrange a tour for you, Councillor Bates. I'm sure that won't be a problem, so that you can go and see the fantastic facilities that we have at Places for Leisure. With regards to the walks, we already do some walks with children, and I am well aware that at the Lightwater Country Park, for example, this is not organised through Surrey Heath, but there are regularly things like we had recently the Gruffalo Walk. We have rocks that are left around the park itself, where you can go hunting for them. I also found, when I was there yesterday, looking at the afterlife bench that we've recently installed, there was somebody there geocaching. So these things do exist, and I think they're wonderful for the children to get them out and about in our community. But again, we do an awful lot of walks. We've just launched, for example, a diabetes walk, but we do an awful lot for our community with guided walks.
It amazes me, not particularly about you, Councillor Bates, but it amazes me how often something is suggested and it turns out we're already doing lots of it, which just keeps bringing us back to, I'm amazed at how often this council hides its light under a bushel. It just, you know, you can understand why residents don't know everything we're doing, but I've never, for 6 years I've been doing this, and I'm constantly amazed that the councillors are unaware. I was unaware of the walks. I'm not saying it's Councillor Bates, I'm saying I was unaware of everything we're doing. Oddly enough, I was aware of the diabetes walk. But yeah, we are doing a lot of that. Councillor Bates, does that answer your question?
Yeah, we didn't cover about the ball game signs and about positive promotion of areas where particularly children can play informally.
I'm sure the team would be happy to look into that, about whether we can do further signage or make things more friendly for sport and activity to take place. Absolutely. With regards to the walks, they are regularly advertised in Heath Scene, and also the comms team put them out on social media, so they are regularly out there. So please, when you see them, share, share, share.
Thank you. Okay. Right, I'm not seeing any more questions, so we'll go to the recommendation. The Executive is advised to resolve that the proposed physical activity strategy for Surrey Heath, entitled Moving Forward, as set out in Annex A of this report, be formally adopted for the 2022-27 period. Are we agreed? Great, thank you. Okay. Right. Councillor Perry would normally propose item 9, but unfortunately had to send in his apologies, so I will just do it very briefly. This is an example of more continued support from the government for businesses due to lockdown. Many industries and businesses have had excellent support, but some have had less and have been particularly hit by Omicron and Plan B. Leisure, hospitality, personal care, tourism, weddings, entertainment, gyms, etc. The government has given us 2.4 million for distribution to these industries and to top up some others. Like previous grant schemes, we need to get it out as soon as possible for it to affect businesses that are close to the edge. And the recommendation is to resolve that we delegate the authority to the Strategic Director of Finance and Customer Service in consultation with the finance portfolio holder. I would be happy to take any questions. Okay. All right. Members, you've heard the recommendation. Are we agreed? Oh, that was close. Councillor Malvaginam, we almost had a point without you asking a question. Okay, Councillor Malvaginam.
I want to keep a good record up here, Leader. Joking apart, I mean, it's great the government is actually providing the relief and helping everyone. It is something, I mean, I don't know how much promotion you or we, the council, need to do, because I have spoken to businesses down, up and down this high street, and I know of at least 2 in the last lockdown did not even apply. I mean, maybe in the one particular case, I know it was a lingo problem. He could not truly sort of have a proper conversation. I know some of the officers have been out there promoting it. It would be a very good idea to go out and talk to people and see how best we can help them. Particularly, I'm more concerned about the pubs and the restaurants, which really have struggled in the past. Thank you.
Okay. I can actually tell you, Mr. Fox and his team, I think, do an outstanding job, an excellent job. You are right, Councillor Mavaganam, that some people don't apply. And when I raised that very point, this was probably 18 months ago when the original lockdown and grants were being given, that team under Mr. Fox have been incredibly proactive and getting out there and contacting businesses, sometimes 3-4 times before they actually then applied for the money. All right? It was almost the literal example of we couldn't give money away. All right? But the team actually did an incredible job, bearing in mind they took on that workload on top of their normal day-to-day work as well. So I'm very, very pleased, and I'm very happy to confirm to you that the team is very, very proactive in getting that out there. And I have no reason to suspect they wouldn't do it again for this grant. Okay? Right. Before Councillor Mavaganam can think of another question. All right. Members, are we happy to accept the recommendation? Agreed. Thank you. Okay. Now, if members wouldn't mind, we have exclusion of the press and public and then the exempt minutes. That goes into exempt if there is any discussion about the exempt minutes. But there's no reason for us to go into exempt if there is no discussion intended. Can I ask if anyone has anything they're going to raise about the exempt minutes? No. Members who are still online, are there anybody who wants to discuss anything in the exempt minutes? In which case we'll have to go to exempt. But failing that, we can actually agree to sign the exempt minutes, keeping them exempt without going in there. Yeah? Okay. I'm right in saying I'm able to do this? Yes? Okay. So I can simply ask the question then. Members, are you happy for me to sign the exempt minutes? Okay. I'm just conscious of meetings not wanting to go on too long because the members, it's all right for us after we rock up at 6 or 7 o'clock, but the officers have been here since the very early hours. So we'll let them get away. Okay, I think we are there. Thank you very much, members. Thank you, members online. Thanks for all of the debate. Thank you, officers.